So a lot of people know John for the prison escape. So John escaped from Silverwater Prison, maximum security, in a hijacked helicopter by his girlfriend. But there is a lot more to John's story, and that's something that John really wants people to know. And John didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a bank robber. He had a traumatic childhood, and I'm going to ask you to just share about how life started for you, John, because you were a really good kid, weren't you?
Yeah, I was a good kid. I was actually very sickly and had asthma and just about anything you can get, I got it. Read a lot of books. Listened to, in those days we didn't even have TV. We used to listen to serials. And, you know, sort of lived in a bit of a world of fantasy because I was adopted. Never knew who my parents were, and my father was, in those days, he'd come home drunk, terrorise the neighbourhood, terrorise us. My mother was a nervous wreck, and anyway, she committed suicide when I was 17, and I blame Dad for it, but I also blame the banks because they'd foreclosed on the house, and we finished in a really the worst house in the suburb. We're all ashamed of it, and I thought it brought Mum down further. In those days, people didn't get depressed, didn't get treated for depression, things like that, and so she never got any treatment. Just they gave her a lot of sleeping tablets, anything she asked for in those days, and she overdosed and died. And so I blamed Dad, but later I blamed the banks as well. So I left home. He begged me not to go, and I said, look, you know, I was not ready for it. And the first day that I left, I booked into a cheap rooming house. They put me in with this big wrestler guy, and he tried to rape me, you know, the first night. So I was really dirty on the world. There's no doubt about it. I had a chip on my shoulder. Got mixed up with guys a bit older than me. They thought we fell into petty thieving, like shoplifting, and you know, even going in and ordering meals and running out of shops, not paying for it. And just anything we could do to survive, really. And by the time I was 17, I was at Long Bay, and shouldn't have been in Long Bay at 17, but I was there, and that was one of the toughest jails in Australia at the time. And I had to learn fast the criminal code, and the criminal code is the opposite to what we live by out here. What we abide by and live by and believe in here in the criminal, in the world of prisoners and jails, it's the opposite. For instance, if some guy is getting bashed in a corner, and you tell the officers, look, this guy over there getting bashed by this guy, they'll bash you, or they'll put you on protection and call you a dog. Everything's opposite. You've got to understand that thieving's okay in jail. So get out, if you're a good thief, you're respected. And at that stage, the highest regard was for bank robbers. So I said, well, if we're going to do it, I'll be the best and I'll be a bank robber. So there weren't many bank robbers in those days. The only two I knew of were Darcy Dugan, very famous escapee bank robber, and the other one was Kevin Simmons. Both of them were doing life. So I should have got the message that there was no future in being a bank robber escapee, but that's what I became.
And John, why was the highest regard for bank robbers?
Because this is the criminal code, that if criminals look at it this way, that if you're going to be a criminal, they respect the ones that are good criminals. And in those days, there were no drugs. And I've got to emphasise that. There were no drugs. And the code of ethics was maintained to a high degree. It was very rare to see anybody in protection. Now, you go to Goulburn Jail, maximum security jail, half of the population are on protection. And mostly it's because of drugs. They get into trouble over drugs. I've seen some very strong, staunch guys go on protection. And people say, oh, they're dogs, but they're not. If they step out in the main, they're going to get stabbed by 6 people, you know. And it's happened. Goulburn was known as the killing fields. I think 8 people killed in 3 years, just stabbed to death. And I was in the yard there only for one of my. I was playing chess and didn't see it. But the guy, what happened? One little Asian guy ran up and put his arms around this big guy, who was a bully, pinned his arms to his side. About 5 others ran in with knives, makeshift knives. Ping, 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 and he fell to the ground dead with 56 holes in him. And then they just dragged him down and put a blanket over him. And the prison guards came in and said, we're short of it. Oh, go and have a look under the blanket. Another one down. That was their attitude. And the governor should have been sacked. It took a lot before what they finally did was segregate the jail. And they started putting the Muslims in one yard, the Aussies were mixed with the Islanders, and Aussies were mixed with the Asians. And then you also had the Aboriginals in another yard. And then further down you had protections. Then you had protection from protections. Then you had further down the high security protections and high security risk. And the jail was a logistic nightmare to run. That's what it was like. And that's people don't realise with jail that they see American jails, movies, and they see that it's always action, bang, bang, one thing after another, bang. But jails aren't like that. Most of the time, anyone who's been in jail will tell you that it's probably 95% boring, and then there's that 2 to 5% where it's full on. And believe me, when it's full on, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there.
John, what did you tell yourself to know that you had to survive in there?
Well, excuse me. My father was a fighter and boxer. He taught me to fight, and I got into a fight very early and won it. That I was told by an old guy, that's good that you did that, but don't kid yourself. There's guys in here who could beat you with one hand behind their back. So don't go into assault with them, don't do this, because I was a young guy, And there were young guys getting raped in those days. In those days, I want you to try and visualise what it was like. There's 3 in a cell, the lights off at 9, no TVs, no radios, no books, no sheets. There was a bucket in a corner, that was the toilet, and there was a jug of water for 3 men, and there was nothing to do. So if a good-looking boy happened to step in the cell with the 2 other guys, they'd look at him as possible entertainment, and it happened a lot. Now, the authorities knew about it, they hushed it up, they didn't want it getting out to the public. There were a lot of rapes and stuff went on those days. As everybody knows, homosexuality's been legalised, and they even supply condoms in jail now, and that's not a problem now in jail. It's very, very rare there's any rapes or anything like that. But drugs have taken over and become the main problem in jail, and guys will do anything to get drugs. If they're addicted to drugs, they can't do much about it. They need drugs, and so they get their people outside to try and bring it into them. So in the end, it gets to the stage where you can't get shoes sent in, you can't get books sent in, you can't get anything sent in because of the drug problem. And your visitors, you've got dogs jumping all over them,
And we're going to hear a bit more about the drugs side of things from Scotty shortly. Now, John, you had a gambling problem, and I mean, can you gamble in jail? But was that the fuel for you to actually continue to commit these robberies, or was it your anger towards the banks that kept you going, or did you become fearless and think that you weren't going to get caught?
Well, it's a bit of everything there because I gambled. The first 3 bets I had, I didn't believe in gambling. My father used to lose, and he said, "Don't bet; it's a moke's game." But I used to play a lot of tennis. Went to my mate's place. It was raining, no tennis. He used to bet on a horse. He said, "John, just pick a couple of horses." There SB bookies in every street in those days. So I did it against my better judgment because I had money that I didn't use on the tennis fees. 3 horses, they all won. I remember one was the Caulfield Cup, Red Crows, come from last. And it just, it's ignited something in me, the thrill of it. And I became hooked. And I only bet small in those days, But when, as I made a lot more money, I started to gamble, and heavy, and started to lose. And then when I got into a lot of trouble, I was trying to get to America. I had a girlfriend over there. They wouldn't let me in because I had a minor record. And I thought about the banks and said, that's where I'm going for the money, for the banks, because, you know, I didn't see, and it took me a long time, only in the last 15 years that I accepted and worked with psychs, that when you run into a bank or run into anywhere with a gun, what you're doing, it's not you against the banks. You know, banks and institutions, they're abstract. They're just abstract. So it's you against the people in the bank. It's you against the tellers. It's you against the people in there. There might be 10 people in the bank. Now, 8 of them probably accept they've been robbed and know something exciting. But 2 others might be traumatised. They may never be the same. It could ruin their life. And I accept that over the years, the many banks that I robbed and the things that I did, that I've got a lot of victims out there. And I accept that. And so you've got to say to yourself, well, look, how long does this keep going on? And why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? And once I made the decision, I remember I was in a bank. I think I told you this. I was in a bank.
This was your light bulb moment, really, wasn't it?
It was.
It really turned your whole thinking
Well, yeah, I had a few light bulb moments, but this is because I'd worked with PsychsNet. But when I walked into this bank, and this was about 12 years ago, 11 years ago, and by then I'd made the decision that I was going to try and do a lot of good. You know, I realised I'd done a lot. My family had suffered a lot, and I would try and do some good. And this girl, I went in the bank, there's no one there, and this girl came up, she was really nice, and the bank teller, there's no one else in there. And she was so nice, did everything she could for me. And then she said, "Thank you, John." And I thought, she knows who I am, but she didn't. She just, because she saw my name. And I thought, you know, a decade ago, I'd have run in there with a mask and a gun and terrorised that girl. And that's the truth. That's what I used to do. I used to bluff. I never had any intention of shooting anyone, but they didn't know that. As the judge said, you didn't send them a letter and let them know. So I realised then, I thought, what a nice girl, and she wouldn't deserve what I've done and what I could do to her. And isn't it great to be able to walk out of a bank, not have to run out of a bank with a mask on, you know? Yeah.
Fight for John. I don't know why. Doesn't like you today.
Can you all hear me asking John the questions?
Yes.
So I want you to know I'm not interrupting him, but it's rather than me taking the microphone. So I'll give you the microphone back in a sec, John. But John, when you had that light bulb moment, was that before or after the Great Escape? So how long were you in jail? The next questions are, how long were you in jail for before that Great Escape? And you were also bashed within an inch of your life, weren't you, at Kentridge Jail? Right. And can you give us some context as to when that happened and what led you to want to so desperately... I mean, I'm sure everybody that goes into jail desperately wants to get out, but go to the extent of hijacking a helicopter, that's next level. So but if you can just put all that into context, that'd be great.
Well, I will, and I'll go right into that. But I've got to tell you, we're talking about, did you think that you're invincible or something like that?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes when you're succeeding at something, often you start thinking you're invincible. And what happened that I started to think it was fate. And I still believe it was fate, that because I was 18 when I made the first escape from Bathurst courthouse, and a cop chased me and shot at me. Bang, bang. Missed. Next time I was down in Melbourne in '66, robbed a bank. Tellers came up. In those days, tellers had guns, real guns, and we knew that's why there weren't a lot of banks robbed, because the guys were worried about getting shot. They were trained, bang, bang, 3 times. They hit the car. I thought, missed again, you know. And then got in a helicopter, bang, 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 3 times. Missed again. And I thought, missed again. And then I robbed the bank in Barrel. This off-duty cop picked up half a house brick, and threw it at me, missed me by about an inch. That would have knocked my head off. I thought, missed again. And I thought, I am not meant to die. You know, I'm meant to be around, but it's not to rob banks, it's not to escape. And I realised that what I've got to do is get out, help people, and get all the stories across about what happened, how the system is a 2-tiered system, how it works. It does work, it's a 2-tiered system. You'll see often that people will get off in court if they are somebody and they've got a bit of pull or a bit of money or a bit of status. The average guy, if you come from a place like Mount Druitt and that, you've got no chance you're going to jail. And once that happens and you get on a treadmill, people stay on it like I did for decades. So what I've done, I've written 7 books. I've written 7 books. I've done a lot of talks at universities. I've done shows like that, and I love doing shows with Kerry. We've done them in Queensland, we've done them in Victoria, we've done it in the jail down in Perry's, haven't we, down there? And we've also done them here at Asheville. So, and Kerry's got a way of bringing out all this thing because she does get all these stories out of people, and it's great. I think it's an achievement. I think it's something that should be done, and I support it wholly. But with me, I always, until I got that light bulb moment, I felt I'm hitting back at the system. I'm robbing banks. I'm hitting back at the system, you know, because banks rob us. They might have been responsible for my mother's death. Yeah. So, and down in Melbourne when I got caught, I had tried to escape. I got to escape from Hawthorn Court and nearly made it, but got tackled at the top of the steps by a guy. Now they don't play rugby league down there. You wouldn't believe that an AFL player could tackle you, but that's what happened. And that was fate too. It was meant I wasn't meant to get away. And they took me to Haight Station, stripped me off, flogged me with batons, kicked me and they used to do that to everybody. And I thought, what I'm going to do when we get out, I'm probably going to kill one of those guys. I thought about how I'm going to kill him. That's what it does. And I wasn't the only one. I've heard so many stories, the same thing. And now I do tours down in Melbourne and go around. It's reopened, Pentridge reopened for tours, and Kerry's been down there. They're good, aren't they, down there?
Yeah, it's very interesting because they've set it up now as a restaurant. And John took me for a tour there, and off to the side of the restaurant, they've got these little wine cellars set up with 2 little chairs in there, and people can go in and have a few drinks in there.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh, great.
And John took me into his cell, and we had a seat down there and just, you know, had a bit of a look around. And he said, that's where I slept. And it was so weird, wasn't it? Just tiny little area.
4 years. It was 4 years.
And now people are having a few drinks in there.
Well, they are. And the expensive one, they've got 5 cells they've opened up in a big thing, and Catherine and them stayed there. It's expensive. And you stay there overnight, and you've got the expensive restaurant there, and you go into the swimming pools there. Or you've got to worry about a lot of ghosts. There's a lot of ghosts, I reckon, down there. A lot of people were hanged and executed down in Melbourne, and people think about that. So they do try and scare some, I guess, with that. But the thing is, so I thought, I got out of there, and then I just...
so how long had you been in jail at that stage?
Well,
how old were you?
I did 7 years, 4 years in Haight Station, getting flogged and terrorised for 4 years.
And how old were you then, John?
I was just in my 20s.
Right.
And what happened, got out when I was about 30, they had a Royal Commission, we had riots down there, we had a Royal Commission, and I've got to say, there's always a bit of humour in jail, and I've got to tell you about one incident. There was a mad Irishman, his name was Brennan, and he was in the cell under observation, and he called out, and the officer that was on that night was named Leonard. He was a strict military man, moustache, spit polished shoes, pressed shirt, everything. And this Brennan called out, he said, officer, quick, hurry. And he ran down and he opened the trap, he said, what? And he went bang, threw all his shit all over him. All over his face, down his shirt. And he started screaming. This is the guy who's in charge of HVS and basketball. Oh, and he's run up the thing. And we heard him on the phone. And everybody's saying, shit, what's going to happen? And anyway, he's on the phone. We know what's going to happen. They're going to come down. The squad's going to come down. They're going to bash him. They're going to flog him within an inch of his life. And then he's thinking about the Irishman. And he thought, officer. No answer. Officer. Sorry about that, old chap. Yeah, and there's no answer. And then he said, I'll pay for the dry cleaning. This is true. This actually happened. You couldn't make this up. You couldn't make it up. Anyway, guess what? Because they come down and we're all screaming out, kicking doors. They nearly killed this guy, the Irishman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Just
so,
for doing that?
Yeah, so, yeah, but the crims are funny. A lot of violent things will happen, and I'll turn it into and show the funny side. Now, you're all laughing there, but this is a pretty heavy thing that's going on. This is a place where they bash people every day.
Yeah.
And this guy's, the officer, the tough officer's running up screaming. Because he was the one guy who had the immaculate clothes.
I bet you ought to love that.
Well, we did, but we were worried about what had happened to the Irishman. He finished up going to Ararat. He was crazy.
Were you scared, John, in jail?
Yeah.
Because you did, we'll fast forward a little bit, but we'll go, because you spent about 30 years all up in jail, didn't you?
Yeah, maximum securities. But I mean, last time they whacked me, give me 15 years for the escape in a helicopter.
Wow.
There is one that has gone my way. So you do win some. And when I was in Queensland, the girl slipped me a pistol. It didn't work. It was a replica pistol, but she drilled a hole in the middle and painted it black, so it looked real. And these guys had real guns. They took me to hospital, and it was set up on you. And she was waiting. And anyway, she ran over and slipped me the gun. I was handcuffed and pointed at him, and he went. I said, go for your gun, and you did. And he dropped his hands, so I turned and ran, got away, got in the car, got away. And they didn't get me back for about 7 years on that. And what happened, they lost the case. They couldn't, and they still can't charge me. I don't mind telling because there's nothing they can do about it. What happened, it shows you that in Queensland and all that. Right, I'm sorry, but
Oh, thanks, John, from Queensland, and you know that. The
you,
interview's over now.
and the prison officers, I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course, that's
So
right.
what happened, they didn't make out a warrant.
Right.
Which means when they took me outside the gate, I was not in legal custody. I was not in legal custody. So they found out later, when I tried it, that I didn't escape because I was already out. They took me out, and illegally, they took me illegally out the door. So I wrote a letter to the commissioner saying, you shouldn't have taken me out there. I didn't want to go,
Yeah.
And so they hated me for that, and they did get me back about 11 years ago. They extradited me for not reporting on parole on something 30 years ago, which was absolute crap. But they got me for 6 months for that.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
John, when the day that you did escape in the helicopter,
Yeah.
did you have any doubts whatsoever, or like that you'd get caught, or did you think, no, this is I'm out of here and we're never getting caught?
Well, not many people know, but the police know. We had it set up for false passports. See, and but when I rang, because the guy was in jail, when I rang, the wife said somehow, John, they're on us. Somehow they knew about her. Now I don't know.
Is this the Russian girlfriend that they knew about?
No. This was the lady was. See, the guy was. He made false passports. They were expensive.
For you guys, okay.
Yeah, but we had the money for that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
And what happened? She said, John, they're on us. Now, I worked it out later. He must have said something to people. He couldn't. It was just too big. He's told people because once that was gone, I knew we were trapped in the country. Because I thought if we could get out to a country with you know, a non-extradition treaty. And there are some of them that eventually I could get Gloria here to come over with her son and see them and visit, you know. And but it didn't happen. Once we couldn't get out of the country, we were stuck. It was just a matter of time. I said to Lucy, look, we're in a lot of time because they can be wrong, and they were getting 300 sightings a day. 300 sightings a day, and they were wrong. But I said they're only going to be right once.
Yeah.
So we won the battle every day, but they weren't going to win the battle once, and that's what happened in the end. They got a tip off about us that was right.
And something interesting happened, didn't it, John, after the elaborate planning and everything that went into this, and there was months because you actually had a pilot as a cellmate, didn't you? And you picked his brains for a long time.
Yeah.
And
well, it never would have happened before. The press picked up that Lucy's father was leader of a squadron, over in a helicopter squadron.
Right.
And he used to talk about he'd fly over Siberia and that, and see the prisoners bloody, come and get us, but of course he never would. But they picked up on that in the media and thought that's how they pulled this off. But the thing is, Lucy was never allowed anywhere near. They're very strict, the Russians over there, never allowed anywhere near that helicopter. She never got near. She didn't know anything about helicopters at all. But we got her to do a trial run. And this is what I mean about fate. You look through my life, there's so much fate there. Like I was meant to get caught getting tackled by an AFL player. I mean, they just don't tackle me. You know? And I was away. I was a very fast runner. I was in my suit. I was away. You know, no handcuffs. And he tackled me. And everybody said later, we just can't believe it. You know. And the same when I got caught in barrel in this bank robbery, there was an off-duty cop there. And when he chased me, I fired a shot over his head, and I went on the ground, and he just kept coming. And he picked up a rock and threw a missile by about that much. And he said, that's not a real gun. Then I fired one to the ground and kicked up the dust. So the point is that it was through him that I was arrested. And I got away from him. It was through, you know, people were driving past. They could see all the red smoke. There was a dive bomb, and they were ringing the stations up and saying, what movie it is, making a movie now and we can't recognise the actors. So what really happened is that when we didn't know how to do it, I knew, I went out and I saw 10 helicopters a day, an hour. We only got out twice a week to the Oval for an hour. But I noticed in that hour, maybe 10 helicopters come over, and I realised the Olympics were coming on. And I thought, any other jail, this couldn't work. But I watched, and the screws just didn't take any notice of those helicopters. Now, any other jail you go, a helicopter comes, because it's rare, straight away, they're alert. They're ready. They've been dreaming for 20 years of shooting down a helicopter or something. That's in their mentality to stop people getting out of jail. So, but these guys, they didn't worry because they knew it's just tourists coming through to look at the Olympic site. So I knew that there was a big chance that if we could hijack a helicopter, they wouldn't wake up until I was on the top.
right.
But we still didn't know enough about it. And this is what I mean about fate. Next thing, there was a con man who was arrested in South Africa. He was a helicopter pilot, he had 8,000 hours. Then they sent him to Scotland, extradited him there to face it, then to New Zealand, then to Australia. Then he landed in Silverwater jail at the exact time I was there. And there were 16 wings, pods. They put him in my pod. Now, the odds of that, what are they? They're million to one, at least. It's got to be fate. And then not only that, guess what? They put him in my cell. They put him in my cell. And admittedly, I manipulated that a little bit. But they put him in my cell. And so straight away, he knew who I was. So I was a bank robber, etc. And I told him I had quite a bit of money put away. And so Lucy was putting a bit of money in his account. And he said to me, John, for 10,000, when I get out, I'll swoop in the helicopter, pick you up and straight out. He still gets you overseas. He was a con man, and he had no intention of doing that. But I learned he had books, helicopter books, magazines. I learned everything there was to know about helicopters, about alarms, a private alarm, silent alarm, which is called a transponder. And if they get into trouble, they pull that transponder out and notify us. So I knew we got to dismantle that. So I said to Lucy, do a trial flight, see where the transponder is, so you know where it is. And so he's got to get his headphones off. So she did a trial flight, come back, said she knew where he was, we could do it. And she did it. She pulled it off. And next thing, we had to know that I would be out because they often shut down jails and wings if there's one of the guards doesn't turn up. If somebody gets sick, if there's a fight, there's a lot of reasons why you might not get out. She had to know I'd be on the oval. We had getting out twice a week. She had to know I'd be there in that particular time. So when they let us out that day, and I said, "Are we going out there?" I said, "Yeah." I rang her, and she was waiting near the airport. I said, "Look, I'm going out for a run. I'll catch you later." And she knew that it went from there.
And she forgot the keys to the getaway car.
Yeah, we had a getaway car.
Elaborate plan with one small detail missing.
Yeah, well, 2 out of 3 is not bad.
Oh, no, that's exactly right. So, John, you've been off parole now for only, 2.5 years off parole?
Just coming up 3 years next month, but
Okay.
they wouldn't let me do anything. I even entered a chess tournament in Canberra, and I like to play chess, and I was pretty good at it. And they okayed that, then they overruled and said, "No, you can't play chess." I had offers to go to universities in different states and do talks, and they wouldn't let me do anything. So when the parole was finally up, got through it. That was near 11 years ago now. I printed up a batch of T-shirts that said, "I'm still here, bastards," and wore them down to Pentridge. And we're doing tours and said, and all the ex-crews are there, and I'm wearing this, "I'm still here, bastards." They put me up in this hotel, the Adina, you stay there, and it looks right down to jail. And I had book signings, released a book, and we just had a ball, and one of the prison officers who used to work in H used a bash bell, come up to a guy he didn't know, he's a friend of mine, and said, "Have a look at him, he thinks he's a movie star." He said, "He stayed in that expensive hotel, he's probably a millionaire, selling books." He said, "I'm sick and I got no money, I've worked all my life." So they still hate me,
What they don't know is what you're doing to give back to society today.
You pointed that out. I do.
And that's the big thing about your story. We're talking about redemption tonight.
Yeah. Well, the redemption is that all the money I made from books, I made a fair bit. I've given just about all of it to underprivileged kids, and I still continue to do. Billy up there knows Billy's helped me at times. Macca over here has helped me at times, and Gloria certainly helped. And we did a lot of things to help kids over there. And the thing is that one, I'm pretty sure we saved the girl's life. She needed a cesarean, and they just wouldn't give it to her over there. And we raised money for that. And the kid, he's a lovely kid, isn't he? He's 3 years old now, and she had to have a cesarean. They probably both would have died. So you achieve things where you see kids going to school, they've got shoes, uniforms, doing stuff that they wouldn't have been able to do. You helped. Yeah. And I got about 6 families at home and a girl in Africa. But I've cut down. I can't keep it going. We're getting old. We need a bit of money put aside. But I still help, but only once a month now. But I still do help, yeah.
Well, John, we won't tell them anymore because it's in the books.
Yeah.
All the story.
Well, I love
great,
this.
wonderful books up the back there with the whole story.
Yeah, I'd love you to read that book because it's been updated. It's got an extra 3 chapters in it. It's updated until about a year ago, and it's my whole life story. And it's warts and all, and it does turn into worse, the bad parts. And there's another book I've got there. I've written about Ronnie Isherwood, who was virtually forced to be a criminal. His father was a criminal.
Yeah.
And I met him in jail. He was 17 when I went to jail too. I was a lot older, and that's a great book too. So either one's pretty good book. If you're interested, I'll sign it for you.
Well, John, you've come from absolute tragedy in your childhood, and been through a lot of trauma, and as you said, realising now that you've put a lot of people through trauma as well. But you're a very kind person, you know, and I feel really honoured to know you.
Well, I feel honoured to know you, and you've helped out a couple of times with those kids too. Yeah, I remember.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, she has.
And you know, you're a true example that at any age you can change and anything's possible. And that's such an encouragement to know. And Gloria, we just want to honour you tonight as well, because you've stood by John all these years and you're very much part of the story, and you are a real inspiration. So, John, we'll get you back up for a Q&A shortly.
Yeah,
but
sure.
let's give John a wonderful round of applause, and thank you so much, John.